Hey guys, this is a short-ish video talk on the next and last project, the portfolio. Just a reminder that the narrative projects are due Wednesday now. Tuesday is a university-wide day off, spring day. Um, and I'm asking you this week to kind of just begin researching, sketching out ideas for your portfolio project. Now, I will get into what you know, the description of the project and what you need in it. This is not a project to go wild and creative with. Deanie Grigar, who is runs our program, she is the one who teaches the senior seminar project in which you kind of refine your portfolios. So I would say for DTC students, this project is to be sort of a conventional. I would not do super scroll animation for this. You want your content for your skills and your superpower to be up front and center. So a portfolio site can certainly have style, visual hierarchy, all of those things, but it should be extremely functional. And it's although I'm allowing a scroll site, the scroll site must have sort of defined sections. I'll get into that later. So this week, poke around, do some research. I have some links, some previous student projects you can look at to decide what it is you want to do with your portfolio. And of course, the other projects in this class will go into that. If you have no other projects, at least those 3 projects in this class will go in there. But you might have animations, videos, your own photography practice, things like that. Okay. Now, I do have 2 templates that can help to get you started. This HTML5 just has the Eric Myers reset. It's blank, but it's got set up with Eric Myers reset. I feel like this should start to be like standard for everyone. Some of you are starting without the doc type declaration, the HTML language English and UTF-8. This viewport is what corrects responsive design sites on iOS devices, which tends to resize things. And then the Eric Myers reset is just going to be for now until browsers change. We're going to be this is good to use it to turn off those defaults, or else, as we've spoken about, that those defaults have to be corrected in responsive design work. Okay. Then the other template it includes a grid, so it has this kind of structure. By no means am I telling you to build a portfolio with this structure, but it has a wrapper that is centered, and it has a percent. It has a percentage on it, right? Basic navigation up here. By the way, you can name these different parts of your site whatever you want, but there's a standard. Homepage is really not used much anymore. It's sort of an old-fashioned term. You can name things about. You can have your index.html be the about, or you can have a splash page that is introducing the site, and then the about page is your kind of bio stuff. Now, what you do for some people like a contact page, some people put a form to contact. That can be nice. Put a map in, whatever you want to do. The links here, this is just an option, links for linking your favorite websites or your interests or your, the nonprofits you like, any issues that you are concerned with. That's can be good. But you can also have 2 galleries. You can have a gallery for a sort of 2-dimensional design, a gallery for video, or you can have as many of those as you want. I'm asking for at least 4 sections, at least 4. Okay. Now, this is using a grid, but it's only using the grid on. Let me just see, make sure I know what I'm talking about. The grid container. Yeah. So the grid container has in it two things. One is the main, and inside the main are an image and some text. I'm trying to get you to think this through. So you have, when you have a structure like this, you do not need to make the entire thing a grid. I mean, you could, it's not a problem. But if I want side-by-side things like this main and this aside, I can just house the two of those in a grid. And what I've done is I have it as 3 fraction, 1 fraction, giving that relationship, 3 columns and 1 column. You see? So you can either make the whole design a grid, or you can just target certain side-by-side elements of your design, if that makes sense. This is also a grid, right? This navigation. It has and it's going to be on the UL, not the nav. The UL is the parent that gets the grid. Let's see up here, right here, display grid, and repeat 4 at 1 fraction. Now, the nav also has, I'm sorry, the header also has, the header has a grid, right? So let's look at this again. The header up here has a grid dividing the name, your name, which is the title of each page, and the nav. And if I put a border around that, you would see that and that. Okay? Now, there is a padding going on the header, which explains why there's the space here and here. But that's the blue. The blue is the nav. The UL is the green. Okay? So a lot of nesting going on, but that might be a way how you put a header together. Some of you might be interested in a persistent header, in which case your header would be outside of any other elements. It usually is. It wouldn't be in a wrapper, right? And then you'd position fixed, top 0, left 0, 100% width, and whatever height is needed to cover that top area. What that means is if it's position fixed, when you scroll, it will always be there, and your navigation will always be at the top of the page. You could also do the same thing with the footer, positioned fixed at the bottom 0, left 0, 100% width. Okay, now, really important to explain how you begin a multi-page site. Some of you have done it for your narrative project, some of you have not. What you want to do is use your index.html to begin the structure. You want at least a kind of layout like this, colored borders. Make sure you have an external CSS style sheet, because if you start populating your different pages by copying, you're going to have all of your CSS stuck inside the head of each one, and that you want an external style sheet so that you can change one value and all of pages will pick it up, right? So what you do is you get your style sheet, and I of course don't have this as a linked because it's one page, but you would take all your styles, make an external style sheet, make sure you have your navigation set up with your links to your different pages. Even though these pages don't exist yet, once you name them, then when you're ready to save as, you just save your index.html with this structure, save as about, save as gallery, save as links, save as contact. Now, you might have a different design for each page, but it should maintain its structure. That is, when you click from one link to another, we're not seeing the page kind of go out of whack and change, the wrapper changes sizes and height. So you want it to look like what's happening is just the content is changing, right? And the way you do that is make sure you work on your index.html enough so that the structure is all there. And then once you populate the about, gallery, links, contact, or whatever pages you have, you will do things on those particular pages that are unique. And you might add new IDs and new classes to the external style sheet, or you could put the unique classes or the unique CSS for each page in the head of that page. Now, let me give you an example. Um, let's say you go to the gallery page. I don't have this as a page yet. So if, let's say I go to the gallery page and I want my navigation to show that I am on the gallery page. Well, certainly you can have an H2 here saying gallery. Do not make your H1 called gallery or about. This is the place for the name of your site. It would be the equivalent of like Amazon.com taking away Amazon.com and or putting Amazon and putting like you know you know science fiction books as that. So you really want to maintain the H1 across the whole all the pages. This could be the name of the page, but you could also highlight the tab for the page you're on. How do you do that? Well, you could add a class to the list element for gallery. You could add a class, I guess it would be in the A, because the A is becoming block level in the CSS. In this situation, I'm making the A block level to fill out the list element. But you would add the background color there with a class, and then inside of your pages style sheet, which is in the style in the head, you could add that class to the whatever color it is, so that it picks up. So there's lots of things that you can do that combine a standard structure with an external style sheet for all of them, and then making differences throughout. Most of the time you're just going to use classes and IDs, but you can also use direct forcing change within the page's own style sheet in the head, because it will override whatever's on the external style sheet. I hope that makes sense. Please have a header and a footer. A footer is very important, especially for portfolio. That can be where you can link your name to an email, or at least your name and maybe date. Okay. Now going back. So those are templates you can get started with. That's just for you to get started. Obviously you're changing things around for your own needs. The process of designing any site, but in a portfolio site, you're going to do some research. You're going to get screen grabs of things you like. You can also inspect Element to find out fonts and colors that you like. This is great. All designers do this. It's a great way to kind of get a sense of what you're going for. Maybe you combine some ideas of here and there, but I would sketch out with a pencil, paper, pens, colored pens, whatever. Sketch out what your site will look like. And usually with bigger sites, this would be a storyboard. It would be like, the user goes from this page to this page to this page, and this is what it looks like. In this case, your navigation is straightforward. It's, the navigation will have links to all pages. It's not going to be a complex thing. But storyboard simply means, what do the pages look like together, okay? For the most part, you want to keep your color scheme continuous throughout, but I mean, if you want to, you can make subtle changes color-wise, but probably not layout-wise. I mean, let me point this out. Like, so you, sorry, let me just go here. So I wouldn't like change, definitely don't change where the navigation is from page to page. That would be an error, because people are used to going up to where they know the navigation is, right? But you might change a background color if you want. Don't feel that's necessary at all. But really important is to maintain structure. Okay. The moving on here. Oh, by the way, at least 4 sections named whatever you want. It's typically about, and maybe different types of galleries, contact links, and so forth. Then you gather your media. That is, you gather screen grabs of your site. So let's say the Blackbird project, I would make a screen grab of your Blackbird project. Make sure you resize it for the size you're using it for. But enough of the screen grab should show the layout that you've done. And then, of course, a link going to the Blackbird site. You also will do that for your recipe and your narrative. Now, some people use the different device widths to show it's responsive. That could be effective. I'm also going to be asking you to insert a brief description of these projects, like simply like, my first website, formatting the poem by Wallace Stevens, learned about CSS, responsive design for, these are, it's good to have little descriptions for your media that you're showing in your portfolio. Then you build the HTML, and hopefully you understand that building the HTML means just getting structure there, putting colored borders around things, getting the basics. And then I would repopulate those different pages, especially when your navigation is ready. And then you start with your external style sheet. You start working on your responsive design, basic color, things going on. Add your content, and then you finalize that after the critique. You get your, well, no, before and after the critique, you're finalizing the details of your CSS. Reminders about responsive design. I know some of you are still struggling with some of this, and I will be available to talk to you about it. But really important that mobile first is the whole method of responsive design. That is, I mean, there are people who do different methods, truthfully, but the idea that most of the world is on mobile looking at websites, you want to make sure that the default CSS that is outside of any media queries is made for the mobile version, right? And then you introduce your media queries for the sizes going up, tablet, desktop, and wider structures, okay? Make sure that you use percentages, because we want this flexibility with the design, that you're using percentage for everything. That will keep your site fluid, okay? Then just a reminder about width auto. Width auto is the default width that is it's going to stretch as far as it can, given the constraints of the parent. Now, auto also includes all the padding and border margins. All of that stuff is included, and it will just stretch as far as it can go. If you use width 100% and you also have padding like 2% and a border that will go over that 100%. It's a little odd, but 100% doesn't actually mean exactly 100% if you have lots of other additions that's widening that div. Cascade principle for responsive design is really just how you can keep all your default CSS outside of a media query for all your stylings, and then just change what you need to change. It could be just one thing or a few things, or just the grid, but you're making your changes inside those media queries for the different device widths, okay? Because the inheritance or the cascade principle is what's going to pick up all the defaults, okay? Max width and min width. These would be pixel sizes that set limits for further growth. So if you might have a wrapper that's 80% width, but has a max width of 900 pixels or 1,000 pixels, so it doesn't grow beyond that. Same with the min width. You can reduce it to the 90%, but it's not going to get smaller, let's say at 300 pixels, okay? Height values. Now, some of you have been introduced to this with your narrative projects, and particularly with those doing a horizontal scroll. When you want to use height percentages, like you want to define heights of things, you need to set the body and the HTML element at 100% height. Now, let me explain that. You, at the top of the page of your CSS, you say HTML, comma, body, and then you give the height 100%. And you might add overflow hidden. That is, it will lock into place the height as the browser height, and you won't be able to scroll up and down, okay? That once you do that, then you can use on your say the wrapper, you can say 100% height, and it will only go as far as that browser window. That is used in particular cases if you want. In most designs, the height is open, and your page can just go below the body, below the browser. What's visible in the browser. It's automatic scroll. Okay. Okay. Responsive images is simply making all images IMG width 100%, put that in your default CSS, and then you don't have to worry about images as long as your images are inside containers. If it's outside a container, it will of course blow up to be 100% of the window, right? So that is an easy way to make responsive images. Then all you're worried about is the container width, say in a grid or something. Your breakpoints, the breakpoints are those measurements of the device width where you add a media query. This is all by design. You can have as many as you want. For the portfolio, you should at least have one media query, but it's not based on the device. It's based on how you're working out your design. And then, of course, this is that turns off the iOS resizing. This is a media queries link if you want to get more explanation. This is my example of how to work out a navigation bar, but I have it in the template. Google Fonts is where you can get your fonts. This is, it's well, it's over 1,000 now, font families. And then FontPair is another free place to get fonts. There are lots of fonts. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not. So there are other font warehouses where you can get free fonts as well as pay for fonts. But this font pairing actually is a good resource to see how certain fonts work together. Some of them are sans serif and a serif, but you can get a sense of what these Google fonts, how they work together. It might be worth looking at this for what you're going for. I think it's hard. Fonts are hard if you don't have the experience. This for grid, you can use this to get things the way you want to lay out your work. I keep saying, as somebody called me on this, that grid is simple. Grid can be very complex if you want it to be. But if you take the simple route, that is the grid template columns. I don't know why that didn't work. Oh, grid container run. Oh, this is not working? Oh. I see. That's just the example text. So if I go one fraction, and I run it. So that simply gets me. So my point being is that, as I showed you before on my template, you can apply grid for everything, but you can also just tackle the one particular. If you just want two things side by side, just put a div around it, a grid container, a parent around those two elements, and just do one fraction. You don't have to go make your entire site grid-based unless you're kind of needing it to change it in media queries. Okay, here's some other resources. Now here's about the portfolio. It will be due the last class on the 27th at class time, and we will do a critique just as we did last time in that class. The sites will then be due the next Tuesday in exam week on May 4th. Okay. This is to be hand-coded HTML, CSS, responsive. It should be responsive. Okay. At least minimally responsive. Portfolio sites should be. Okay. If you would like to design a single-page scroll website with anchor links, please message me. You should have a navigation bar, and that on a single page will be anchor links going down. There's even an animation thing that I can give you. I've provided on the first kind of overview of the narrative project, but it's a kind of little bit of jQuery that you put into your site that make your anchor links animate scroll down to the next section. I would like you to have a short statement for your projects, the Blackbird, the recipe, the narrative at least, or your other projects. I mean, for your designs, like in your two-dimensional designs, you can have a selection of logos and just do a little description there. It doesn't have to be everything, but anything that's a significant project. Let's see. It is important that you finish a majority of your site's design content for the usability. critique/usability testing. And I will grade on that 27th, I'm going to grade 10% based on what you've completed that thus far. So basically, when I'm grading, it's just remember design is important. Design, color, use a color scheme. Work on your typography. Okay, typography is going to be something I grade. Don't just leave it, sort of standard defaults. Okay, definitely put color to your links. Take away the underline. I mean, underline's okay in some situations, but you want to avoid the defaults. Make sure your navigation is functioning, it's clear and accessible. Pages are consistent throughout the site. There's a unity in the design. Clear visual hierarchy is used in overall design. That is, you're paying attention to layout, color, alignment, imagery, right? Use difference, use repetition, right? So a navigation bar reads as a navigation bar because there's a repetition of those different tabs. Okay, HTML, CSS markup, there should be index.html. Your name is consistently an H1 at the top of the page, and the subheadings would be the H2, right? So the about and the gallery pages. HTML5 CSS markup is validated. Semantic elements and divs are properly nested with good hierarchical page structure. Please use a single external style sheet. You can use internal style sheets occasionally to override those externals. The site is responsive to device widths. HTML, CSS are hand-coded. No WYSIWYG editors. Okay, that means using, say, Dreamweaver or so forth. You can use plugins, but just let me know about. You don't want to use any plugins that are going to generate entire website designs for you. Okay, please don't do that. HTML and CSS are well formatted. You're using indentation. And navigation must be in the form of CSS style unordered list enclosed in nav. So this is standard. Please follow those instructions. The nav defines the navigation bar as well as the unordered list inside of it. Okay, that's where search engines are looking to figure out what your site's about. Content, make sure that content is your own. You're not using other people's imagery to define your own portfolio site. Make sure your text is grammatically correct, spell checked, and so forth, and that your images are compressed for the web. They're not huge images. Okay, that's it. Now, some examples. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we've seen some of these before. Portfolio sites express style. So here's an example of doing that work with the responsive. This would mean just you can find the kind of frames for the different devices on the Google search, and then you can just add your screen grabs in there. You know how to do that. You don't need to do all that, but it can be nice. This is a one-page scroll site that is a portfolio that you notice when you do that, it scrolls, it animates down to this. And of course, this is using some of that parallax scroll technique, which is setting the background image to a fixed position, fixed attachment. But don't overdo that. So, I mean, I think this is very effective because it's personalizing a portfolio design site. Some other ones are here. Here are some collected ones. And so these are just some examples of student sites that I think are really nice. I mean, color scheme is so important to kind of just lock in kind of a beautiful unity of design. This is a student who did that. Actually showed the graphic elements in Illustrator, but doing the responsive layouts. So you can poke around and just get some ideas. Okay, oh, Betsy's is gone. All right, I'm going to figure out. Betsy's a nice site, but I'll figure that one out. And these are collections of all, like this is like all the portfolios, right? Some are better than others. Some don't even exist. Okay? So poke around, get some ideas, and we will next week really start building. By next week, start building. You can build whenever you want, but at least get a good plan going. Okay? All right, that's it. Let me know if you need any help. Bye.